Welcome, everyone, to a new and improved and recommitted Mariners Forever. Welcome to the channel. If you're new here, if you would please subscribe. Let's try to get that thing to that key magical 1,000 subscribers level. If you are new and I don't look familiar to you, then welcome. But if I do, you probably know me from Seahawks Forever. Dabbled with some Mariners stuff early in my podcast career, and then tried to launch this show about halfway through the season. Michael Thompson and I did. Schedules just didn't work out. Things got in the way, moving around a little bit, and with Seahawks Forever being my primary focus. But this is now here to stay, and you can count on at least once a week updates from this show, as well as a whole bevy of special guests from around the Mariners content creation world. Some that you know, some that you might not, but I'll get to introduce them to you. Michael will be back as this schedule allows. So will some other guys that I really, guys and gals that I really look forward to talking Mariners with. I am as passionate and long time of a fan of the Seattle Mariners as I have been of the Seattle Seahawks, which is to say that I was there from day one, year one. Yeah, dating myself, certainly. But and so the fan part of me has been there. But just a little background again, if you are new, spent several years in broadcasting many years ago. Obviously got my degree in that at Washington State University. Went and did small market television stuff, did some play-by-play, covered local sports news, was the anchor guy, all of that. And so, again, if you're new, welcome. Also, a little bit of an announcement. This is what this is going to look like. It's all under one umbrella now, called Northwest Forever, over on the Patreon page. And let me just switch that QR code. So if you want to scan it right there, did some major construction, everything one-stop shopping now over there on Patreon, called Northwest Forever. All my Seahawks Forever content, Mariners Forever, audio, video, Substack, all of it. All right, so let's get to the crux of today, which is my off-season plan. Really excited about this. And what I do, I've done these before back in the day when I talked more about Mariners before focusing solely on the Seahawks. I'm going to put together, in a perfect world where I control what happens with the Mariners front office, of going out and building a roster for 2026 that makes sense within the parameters that we can expect from them payroll-wise. I'll talk about that in a second. Players that we think are legitimately, genuinely available potentially in trade, and also some free agents, kind of mixing it all together, putting it together, trying to come up with the best lineup, rotation, bullpen that I can for 2026. Let's start with this. And I was going to relaunch this channel by doing a reaction to how the playoffs ended, but you know what? It was painful enough. Everyone else who does a really good job at this has had their reactions. I've even touched on it a little bit on Seahawks Forever. It's time to move on, right? And start thinking more positively. And one thing that you should know about me and my content, if you are new to me, is that I tend to lean towards the optimistic, the glass half full, the silver lining. What can you do for me versus what can't you do for me? It's an old scouting adage that I believe very strongly in. And so I mourned and I grieved, and then I immediately shifted into, well, not immediately, it took about 72 hours, shifted into what's next. Because regardless of how cynical you might be from years and years and years of Mariners ownership, and even the GM sometimes as the mouthpiece for ownership, making promises to us at the beginning of the offseason only to have the rug pulled out from underneath them and thus us, I don't think that's going to happen this year. The foundation is stronger. There are more pieces in place. There are more pieces on the way. And we've been talking about this minor league system for years now, and it just continues to get better and better and better. Even with some of the trades we made at the deadline last year, we're able to make those moves and get Josh Naylor and Eugenio Suarez without giving up top prospects. So there are more top prospects available to trade than there are spots available for them over the next several years on the big league roster. There are a lot of teams out there that would love to dip into some of our young talent. 9 of the top 100 prospects in baseball right now on multiple lists are Mariners. And so I've constructed a plan that I think makes sense, that I think improves the roster in a couple different ways, and spends the right amount of money. So my objectives going into this, first of all, and I know this sounds like a broken record. We've been looking at this the last couple of off seasons. Certainly, we need more on base. That lineup, we saw it especially against the Blue Jays. It just wasn't good enough at the bottom of the lineup. Now, the frustrating part was that part of the lineup improved this year. Certainly after the trade deadline, when you get Naylor and Suarez and push some of those other guys down, because Dom Canzone was hitting, J.P. Crawford was hitting, Randy Arozarena was hitting. Those 3 players, as we got closer to the playoffs and then into the postseason, stopped hitting. And it really showed up against the Blue Jays, the stark difference between their lineup and ours, how much stress that places on the pitching staff as you move forward. And so that was the biggest objective. The other one was to be smart with some of the players that are making money, about to make money, not letting emotion get too far out in front and not have it overrule reason. And there's one particular move where that comes into play. And I think actually some of you will think that 2 of these moves do. And so I'm going to start with free agent signings, and I'll talk about some trades that I made, and then we'll kind of put it all together, and I'll show you what it all looks like in the field and as far as the lineup goes and the pitching rotation. So the first one is the most obvious, and that is bringing Josh Naylor back. The organization hasn't been afraid to talk about it openly. Josh Naylor has said he really likes it here. Obviously, it's going to come down to the numbers. The Mariners can negotiate with Naylor now. They could sign him tomorrow to an extension. And then 5 days after the World Series ends, he can negotiate with any other team. It used to be 10 days. They shortened it recently. So it moves pretty quick. From everything I can find, there's a range out there of what people think he might cost. From the low end of Spotrac placing his estimated average annual value at about $16 million, to some people that think it would be closer to 24, 25. Most of that's fan-driven. Just give it to him. Give him the 4 years, $25 million a year, $100 million total, and just get him signed. Well, that's not usually how it works. But also, I don't think that that's necessary. There's a couple things working in the Mariners' favor here. First of all, he's not your traditional, your typical first baseman that a lot of teams look for. His body type doesn't look for, he looks more like a catcher or a DH. While he did hit 30 home runs in 2024, that's not really his game. And most teams that are looking to spend big free agent money on a first baseman, they want prodigious power out of that position. There's also some worthwhile competition on the market. Pete Alonso is on the market again. Cody Bellinger. There are some guys that play first base that do fit that mold a little bit more. So he's not going to be everyone's cup of tea. He also has a little bit of a different personality, and some teams might not like how sort of boisterous he is, right? Also, from his standpoint, I would like to think that maybe there's a little bit of an Ernest Jones situation going on here. You know, the Seahawks were able to get Ernest Jones signed to a 3-year deal last offseason to man the middle linebacker on defense. Part of it was he was just tired of moving around. He wanted to find a long-term home. He had been traded twice in less than a calendar year, and he and his wife had just had a little baby. They wanted some stability. Well, guess what? Josh Naylor, been traded twice in the last calendar year. He and his wife just had a brand new little baby. I think he's looking for a home and some stability as well. He talked openly about how much he likes it here. And I think this is the key, how much he loves hitting at T-Mobile Park. And now we got a taste of what this city can be and this fan base can be like when things are rolling. So I think it's a priority. I think the team gets it done. And right off the bat, before we talk about specifics and money, There's plenty to do this. If just right off the top, you're worried about how this is all going to fit into payroll, I'll get to that at the end. But just know that, don't forget, Mitch Haniger was on the payroll this year at $18 million, or was it 15? He comes off. Mitch Garver comes off. Solano comes off. There's a couple of salaries that come off the books that just in and of themselves give them space to be able to go out and make a move like this with Josh Naylor. Now, the other one, the name that you might not be as familiar with, is Kaz Akamoto from the Nippon Baseball League, Nippon Professional Baseball. He's played for 8 years over there. He's 29 years old. He's a corner infielder, first baseman, and third baseman. Now, many of you might be thinking about the other Japanese big name, Haruki Murakami, much bigger name. He's been reported to have been posted much earlier, bigger power hitter. He'll likely command a much more lucrative contract on the open market. He's probably going to hit home runs than Akamoto is over the course of his career. He's younger. That also plays into why he's going to make a lot more money on the open market. But also, there are major concerns about his ability to play defense both at first base and third base. What makes Akamoto a better fit for the Mariners, to me, is that he has won 2 Gold Gloves in recent years playing third base. He's played a little over 1,000 games in the MPB. His career slash line, 277, 361, 521. His walks to strikeout ratio is phenomenal. 481 to 796, better than 1-2, which is outstanding. He also has some power. He's hit 30 home runs a number of times. He has 248 home runs in his career, and he's got those 2 Gold Gloves at third base. He's a lefty. Actually, he's a right-handed hitter. I just like the opportunity here. It's been hard to pin down exactly how much he would cost, but I think given the fact that he's 29 years old, given the fact that, yes, he hits for power, but there's always an assumption coming over from Japan that you're not going to quite get to those power numbers that you did over there because there just aren't as many pitchers that throw as hard. You don't see 95 plus as often. And so sometimes that is a question mark when it comes to him. But I think he had a huge home run a couple years ago in the World Baseball Classic against Yamamoto, or maybe it was in their league. And that's a guy we've seen with the Dodgers certainly be able to dial it up close to 100 miles an hour. So he has shown that he can hit that kind of velocity. He's not asked to do it on a regular basis over there. So I think those 2 guys, you sign them in free agency, doesn't cost you anything but money. They've got the flexibility. Again, we'll get into that. And you lock down your corners for the next several years. The 2 spots that have been the hardest for you to get production from. And they're honestly black holes in the organization. A lot of people assume that Colt Emerson can just kick over to third base. That's not what I want. He proved beyond the shadow of a doubt last year that he is a shortstop. That's where I want him to be. Ben Williamson showed a little bit more pop, a little bit of a swing change when he went back down to AAA last year, but I just don't know. I mean, that ceiling is what it is. I think this is a great opportunity to go get a guy at about, from everything I could tell, around $15 million, I think is a realistic expectation of what you can sign him for. And because of his age, maybe a little shorter deal. So I've got 3 years, $45 million there. And then Josh Naylor, take your pick. He's going to want a 4 to 5 year deal at $20 million AAV. The Mariners have never, under Jerry Dipoto anyway, given out that kind of a contract for a free agent hitter before, but mostly because free agent hitters don't want to come here. Naylor does. I think you can get it done for 5 years, $100 million, or maybe 4 and 80. Maybe a tick more than that. Maybe it takes $21 or $22 million a year, but I'm not batting an eye at that. That's fine for me. So I've got my corners locked down. Now I'm making a couple of trades, and this is where it gets really fun. The first one is I'm going and getting Jarren Duran from the Red Sox. Now, he had the huge breakout year 2 years ago. He was MVP of the All-Star game. He just went on that massive tear and then leveled off a little bit. I think, expectations got a little bit too high for the kind of player he was, but really consistent numbers over the last few years with the Red Sox, 510 games. His triple slash 267, 328, 452 with 140 doubles, 50 home runs, got some pop, and 91 stolen bases. This is a legitimate top of the order guy, a real leadoff hitter. You know, we had those issues in the playoffs where they bumped Randy Arozarena out of the leadoff spot because he was struggling so much, moved Julio back there. Neither of those guys should be hitting leadoff. Neither of them really profile to be the type of guy you want at leadoff. Great strike zone recognition, takes a walk, high on base percentage, then he has the speed to steal bases once he gets on there. He just makes a ton of sense. And there are reports, once again, we heard him at the deadline last year, but once again, there's a log jam in Boston in the outfield. There's guys they like on the Major League roster. They got some young players on the way. So this is an opportunity for them to get some return. And they're looking for arms. Those are the reports. He is available. We know that his arbitration number is going to look like about $8 million this year. I don't have any problem with that. So this is the package I put together to present to the Red Sox. Durangelo Senja, the first-round pick of a year ago, the switch pitcher. He was outstanding this year, climbing all the way to high A by the end of the year. Emerson Hancock, we've seen what he can do, and maybe a little more intrigue now for the Red Sox as a guy that if you make him that multi-inning reliever, you get a little more high-end velocity from him, but also someone who has shown when there's injuries in the Seattle rotation can come in and give you 4 or 5, number 4, number 5 starter quality stuff and be a guy at the back of the rotation that can keep you in games. But I think there's more upside there as a bullpen piece, and that might be what appeals to them for that. Troy Taylor is another guy that can throw in the upper 90s. He wasn't healthy all last year, but we saw a little bit of what he could do at the end of 2 seasons ago. So I think he's got a guy with some appeal that's major league ready. And then the headliner of this obviously is Laz Montez. You got to give up something to get something. Laz Montez has prodigious power, has cut down on his strikeout rate last year and increased his on-base percentage, and has shown, even at his size, a lot of people have assumed that he would just be a first baseman at some point in his career. But he's been pretty damn good in the outfield. And so I think there's a lot of appeal for a team like Boston to take on a guy like Montez. And I know that he's a fan favorite, and this is one that would sting. You have to give up something to get something. Now, I ran this through a couple different AI engines, and got back some projections that total WAR on both sides of this project out to be pretty darn even over the years. Now, Greg Weissert is another guy that you see coming back over, because if I'm giving up that much, I want another little bit of a piece. He's a really dependable bullpen guy. He's a guy you can trust in the 6th, 7th inning. He's 29 years old. He was one of those guys that kind of had to work his way up through the minors. But because of that, now he's cheap and controllable for many years, and you can plug him into that bullpen and lengthen that, and you'll see what that looks like in a little bit. So the Mariners take care of both their corners so far with my plan, and they have a leadoff hitter and a guy that plays mostly right field. So it kind of takes care of that conundrum of, is it Canzone? Is it Robles? Is it Raley? None of them have really shown the consistency to be a guy that you can count on. Then I'm going to go get Freddie Peralta from the Brewers. And before I get into this, you're probably asking yourself a couple of questions right off the top. Why do the Mariners need another starting pitcher? Why would the Brewers trade him? Right? So he's in the last year of his deal. He becomes an unrestricted free agent after 2026. So this would be a rental, unless you're thinking about signing him long-term. And there's some history here. He was originally drafted by the Mariners and traded to the Brewers 6-7 years ago, early on in Jerry DiPoto's term. He has referred to this as maybe his biggest regret as a GM as far as trades go, of trading Peralta away. Of course, he was in low A. He was 18, 19 years old at the time. He has become a frontline starter. But he's in the last year of his deal. Milwaukee is as payroll challenged, if not more so, than the Mariners. They are looking to cash in and stock their system. And again, reportedly, They're willing to move him, and they're looking for young arms. And so I think this is an opportunity to add a guy to this rotation that might give you a true number one, where there's questions about whether Gilbert, Kirby, or Wu fit that bill. So what does it take to give up? I put this together and again ran it through a bunch of different engines and got some decent response in what this looks like projecting out long term as far as WAR goes. Giving him 3 young arms. Logan Evans, we saw what he could do as a starter. We've seen them toy with him coming out of the bullpen because right now it's just kind of a 2-pitch mix with the 4-seam fastball and the slider. But Milwaukee is one of those organizations that's known for developing pitching. I think Evans is a guy that can plug into their rotation right now. Michael Morales, 22 years old. He's a guy whose scouting profile has increased over the last couple of years because his velocity has increased. Wasn't seen as a guy that could touch the upper 90s coming out of high school when we drafted him. Now he is, and that's why you're seeing him kind of show up on a little higher on some prospect lists. And then Carlos Vargas, a guy who kind of came into his own this year, throws 100 miles an hour, has postseason experience now. You know, the Brewers, like many other teams, always looking for bullpen help. So there's a whole bunch of arms to throw you. And then we're going to throw you Michael Arroyo too. And I know that you prospect loving Mariner fans out there are going to hate this, but here's my take on Arroyo. Yeah, the kid can hit. And for as small as he is, he's got some pop. He cannot defend. He is a DH long-term. You do not want him playing every day at second or third. He just has no range. He is not athletic, but he can hit. And the Mariners need that DH spot to be flexible, and they need to get better defensively too. So I don't think Arroyo fits into their plans. And so while none of these guys in and of themselves are enough to really be a headliner, you're talking about a rental. And so offering them bulk, I think, gives us an advantage maybe over some of the other teams that are out there that we'd be competing against. But then we also have a lottery ticket coming back to us as well in Eugenio Herrera. He's a 21-year-old. He throws 98, 99, but he's got some command problems, but he has a really promising slider as well. What does that sound like? That sounds like a Mariners pitching project, to throw in their lab, and kind of looks like the poster child for what they like to do with young arms and make him into a guy that a couple years from now could be a dynamic bullpen piece. So I know Jerry likes to operate that way. If I'm getting a rental and I'm giving up some good bulk, then maybe throw me a lottery ticket too that could pay off a couple years down the line if Peralta should walk as a free agent in the offseason. Now, you're probably thinking that gives us 6 starting pitchers. Guys, I'm trading Luis Castillo. And what I love about how this worked out when I was putting my plan together is I couldn't really find a match for Castillo to bring back significant pieces on the major league roster. I don't think the Brewers or Red Sox would be interested in him because they're looking to pare down payroll. There were rumors last year that the Red Sox were interested in potentially in a Castillo trade. They were trying to angle, initially they were asking for Wu and Miller when we were looking at Tristan Casas and some of the other young pieces on their roster. And then, after that ship sailed, after Jerry let them know that, absolutely not, those guys are not in play, there were some reports that the Red Sox are interested in Castillo. But now that appears to have changed, and they would like to control their payroll a little bit. That's why I didn't think he matched in a trade for Durant. Now, if he did, all the better. But in this case, and then the Brewers certainly don't want to take on that salary. That's the whole point that they're looking to trade Peralta, is to get some young talent back so they can control their payroll. So I just have Castillo being traded for a really good package of prospects. Close to the major leagues, wherever you want to send him. I just didn't think it was necessary to put a lot of work into trying to come up with a mock trade for that. If you can get a piece that's going to help us now, a 4th outfielder, another bullpen arm, great. But I think the value in trading Castillo is you save $25 million. His no trade clause expires after this year. And And I think Peralta's better. And so you've improved your rotation and saved yourself some money, which then allowed you to sign Naylor and Okamoto, right? So when I put it all together, this is what it looks like. Just going around the horn, you've got Cal behind the plate, Okamoto at third, JP at shortstop probably on opening day, but at some point in 2026, Colt Emerson takes over that job. My preference would be in spring training. We could have a conversation about trading JP as well. I don't think they're ready to do that, but at some point, Emerson is going to assert himself there, be the everyday shortstop. Cole Young is my second baseman. I'll get back to that in a second. Naylor at first, right field's Duran, Julio in center field, Randy Arozarena in left field, and then I've got Harry Ford as my most of the time DH, but we're going to give Cal some days off as well too. That's why we need the flexibility in that DH spot. Now, where's Jorge Polanco? Right? Let's talk about that. Once he got healthy, after he went through that dip in the middle of the season, got off to the great start, and then there was that kind of mysterious section of time where he couldn't play every day, couldn't play in the field. They would DH him. He could only hit right field. He could only hit right-handed because left-handed. He had the core injury. And once he got fully healthy and could play second base again, he was our best hitter for much of the last part of the year. And in the playoffs, clutch performer. Love everything about the Jorge Polanco story, that we gave him another chance, that fans thought it was a terrible move last offseason. And it kind of looked like they were right when the injuries came back, when he wasn't quite ready. But certainly he was one of the heroes of the postseason and in leading us to the playoffs. He's 32 years old. He's going to cost some money, and he can only DH or play second base. I am not willing to give those two positions to an older player right now. I'm not willing to block Cole Young, and I'm not willing to block the opportunity at DH to give Cal extra days off so he's fresh at the end of the year, and to get Harry Ford some at-bats. Because Harry Ford profiles as another guy. Sure, he's going to have his struggles. He's going to have his learning curve, but he's another guy that walks a lot, gets on base, can steal bases, a little bit higher on-base percentage, not a guy that's going to hit a ton of home runs. We want more of that profile to be developed. And the beauty of where I think this roster is heading is you have this great mix of veterans in Raleigh, most of them homegrown in Raleigh, Rodriguez, but then you got your guys that came in from other organizations, and Randy and Naylor and even Okamoto now coming over from Japan, and Duran from the Red Sox. And then you've got your homegrown young guys. And I know some of you might be thinking, but Polanco's better than Young. Remember what Cole Young was doing before that last month of the year. Young players are going to hit slumps. They're going to run into walls. But all the skills that made him a first-round pick and prompted Jerry DiPoto to say he was the best high school bat in the entire draft the year we drafted him. You saw those skills translate. The quick bat, the bat to ball, being able to take walks, play outstanding defense at second base. He needs to be the second baseman on opening day. It's just time. And to block him and clog up DH with Polanco just makes no sense. I wish we could trade him and get something for him, but it's a player option. He's going to decline it, become a free agent. Unless he was willing to sign a one-year deal, but he's 32 years old. This is his last shot, maybe at a multi-year contract, to cash in on the momentum of how well he played in the postseason. And so that, just in a big picture, just doesn't make sense. And that's one of those that I talked about at the top, where you got to let your head kind of overrule your heart, right? So that's what that looks like. And then I kind of threw together the lineup over on the right side. And of course, depending on lefty or righty on the mound, but Duran is your leadoff hitter. Rodriguez can hit second and Raleigh third. I mean, those guys, that's every day. That's your 1, 2, 3. Naylor, Okamoto, Arozarena, and then Crawford, which will transition into Emerson at some point, Harry Ford, and Cole Young. Now, I know that's a really young bottom of the third, but you can also rotate other guys into that DH spot too. Canzone's still going to be on the roster. Robles is still going to be on the roster. And so you can kind of mix and match with those players as well. And then your starting lineup, Gilbert, Kirby, Peralta, Wu, Miller. Find me a more dynamic rotation where all 5 guys are under 30 years of age in baseball. That's phenomenal. And then your bullpen, I think, is longer. Munoz, Brash, Bizzardo. We saw him take that step this year. Spire, Weissert, and I'm still not counting out Gregory Santos. Still just 28 years old, still super cheap. Because of the injuries, he isn't going to, get a big raise in arbitration. And they went out and traded for him 2 years ago to be right there with Munoz and Brash, to be part of that 3, a high leverage, late inning arm that could get through some of the tougher hitters. That was his profile. And then he just hasn't been healthy. Well, the advantage now, rather than take the cynical route and say, can't count on that guy, he ended the season healthy in Tacoma. The knee was healthy. The elbow was healthy. He was throwing hard. I thought he'd be on the taxi squad at least. I was hoping that we'd get a little bit of a bump from him at the end of the year. But he's a guy now that gets the benefit of an entire healthy offseason in order to be ready for spring training, ready to go. I think he's going to be in that mix. Now, I would like to see him get one more lefty. Maybe Taylor Saucedo has another life left in him. But those are things you can get on the free agent market as well. And maybe even spend some significant money for it. Now, the one thing that I thought about doing is moving Randy, because that is an option. His arbitration number is projected to be between $16 and $18 million. This is the last year of club control. He slumped badly at the end of the year. So how much is that going to impact his market versus how good he was up until September? He's a guy that he's not a great defender, but you can live with him out there. He's a great clubhouse guy. There might be a market for him. And maybe you can move him and help get something else back. Another stud bullpen piece. But once I started crunching the numbers, I realized I didn't have to. And so I'm keeping him because I wanted as much continuity as possible. And also, I think there's a lot to be said about the value of having a guy in the last year of his deal. And a highly motivated Randy Arozarena coming back and wanting to get another shot, pissed off that we came up short, wanting to get to the World Series with this team. And also, oh man, I better be at my best so I can get another contract. I think there's value in that. These are what the numbers kind of look like overall. You see down there at the bottom, $168.5 million. So based on most of the information I've been able to find, they finished the year at around $168 million in salary. We just had Jerry DiPoto say the other day that we expect to start our payroll this year about where it ended in 2025. And so I had expected to nudge this into the low 170s, but I didn't have to. All those moves I made and all these numbers are based on arbitration projections you can get out there. Logan Gilbert's going to get a big raise. Like all that stuff is baked into this. Munoz. These are all about as accurate as you can find. Now, once you get out there and you start looking at Spot Track and some of those websites, it gets a little confusing because they want to show you the tax numbers as well. These, near as I can tell, are the true cash payroll numbers, and they match pretty closely what the Mariners spent this year. You can do everything I just laid out here, for this, without increasing payroll. And that's just kind of how I want to sum all this up. There was a full-page ad put out in the Seattle Times yesterday by John Stanton. The managing partner, I guess, is his title. He's often referred to as the owner. He's not the only one. It's a big ownership group. Chris Larson, a bunch of other people as well. There's still some Nintendo ownership, actually, on the board. But Stanton's the mouthpiece. And he came out and thanked fans and said, hey, there's more work to be done. That work starts now. To which predictably, a lot of the comments down below were, well, you need to spend more. You need to get to 200 million in payroll. You need to spend with the big boys. We can wish for that, but it's only going to lead to disappointment. Mariners organization has shown us exactly how they plan to operate. And that is, it's a standalone business. We're not going to dip into our personal wealth to help fund payrolls. And I understand the frustration of that. I feel it too, because we see other owners do that. They don't. So we can wish for it, or we can try to be realistic. And the point I wanted to try and make here is that they don't have to raise payroll over where it ended this season in order to put a World Series championship roster together. I would submit that this roster right here is not only better than the one that finished the season, but the ceiling is much higher moving forward. You've got a lineup now, with the exception of Arozarena in left field, that also is your 2027 lineup. 28, like moving forward, like how far can we go with this, right? And even some of the other parts and how well they fit together. If you let Freddie Peralta walk in free agency after a year, okay, you can give him the qualifying offer, you get a draft pick for him. That's cool. But guess what? Cade Anderson's going to be ready in 2027, if not at some point in 2026. Cade Anderson, the third overall pick out of LSU last year, a guy that looked as close to the major leagues as anyone in that draft. We may see him debut before the end of the season. He may be a guy that's ready. I'm projecting him to be ready at the start of the 2027 season. I think this lineup gives you better contact. It's longer, gives you more bat-to-ball skills, higher on-base percentage. I think it's defensively better when you have Emerson and Young taking over on the middle infield and then Okamoto with his Gold Glove over at third base. I think you're working some of the young guys in so that they can then become part of the foundation as well. Harry Ford is one of those. And look, Harry could easily be in one of these trades. I would prefer that he isn't, because I think it's a great timeshare with Cal Raleigh to give him some breaks behind the dish. Ford is shown to be good enough defensively himself. And then we can get Ford the other at-bats he needs to develop as a DH. I think it gives us more of a pure leadoff hitter, something we haven't had, kind of a spark plug at the top. And then I like the long-term impact of it, right? If Freddie Peralta becomes Cade Anderson, your bullpen is under control for the next couple of years, your entire lineup beyond 2026. It's a balanced lineup, lefty-righty. There's just a lot that I like about it. But the important part is, what do you think about it? How do you like it? What would you do differently? Really appreciate you watching. For now, we'll think about this later, but I'm sticking with my original Twitter handle. I'm Seahawks Forever. That's trying to start a new Twitter handle these days is probably an exercise in futility a little bit. I may change the name of Seahawks Forever to Northwest Forever, but keep an eye on that. Again, if you want to scan the QR code for the Patreon up here that has all my content, Seahawks and Mariners, under one roof, or if you just want to support me for now, since I'm not monetized on this channel and you get to enjoy it ad-free for the meantime, I'm asking you to subscribe if you would, but also if you just want to buy me a coffee or a beer, you can scan that QR code and do that for me as well. And if you're a football fan, check out Seahawks Forever on YouTube as well, as we are in the thick of it with the Seahawks right there in that race in the NFC West. Again, I'm Dan. Thanks for watching. Really appreciate it. It's going to be a fun offseason, you guys. Let's do it together. Forever and always, go Mariners. See you next time.